When you read people's thoughts on the Real Housewives of Sydney, you'll hear lots of things like, these are the worst people I've ever seen on my TV. They're all terrible. I need it back in my life. It's the greatest show ever. And as someone who has become utterly obsessed with our girls down under, I wholeheartedly agree. This series was incredible, and the worst thing about it was that it never got a second season. So in this video, let's pick apart every aspect of our lesser-known Australian girls and see if Athena X left any hidden clues on how to astral travel to a dimension where it stayed on the air for seasons more. Since I know some of y'all may not have watched, I want to start by going through each individual housewife, all of whom I'm fascinated by, and then we'll talk about some of the major feuds. Also, as of January 2023, it's available for Americans on Tubi, people outside of the US on Hayu or Hayu, whatever. And if you're watching this well in the future, just Google where to watch it. So let's start with a bang and discuss the most unique housewife I've ever seen, Miss Athena X Levendi.
So on your birth certificate, it says Athena X.
Yes, her name is Athena X. We will continue to call her that.
No one ever questioned Malcolm X's name.
Now, Athena X is incredibly multidimensional. In fact, she seems to be from a whole nother dimension entirely. She is the most spiritual housewife of all time, constantly giving people namaste.
I want some namaste. Is it like hummus?
And speaking of her astral travel and past life regressions.
Geisha.
I was a geisha in another lifetime.
She actually gets a past life regression at one point to a life where she was a man named Yakovos, and fellow housewife Nicole, who she was feuding with at the time, was her best friend and stole her wife and took her daughter, who in that lifetime was fellow housewife Lisa Oldfield. Her spirituality also factors into her artwork.
I really don't know what I'm doing 90% of the time. And if I was to say that I am 100% conscious and controlling that paintbrush, I would be lying.
Her art journey mostly serves as her personal storyline, aside from terrorizing the other housewives. She wants to have her art shown in a prestigious gallery, and the owner says he'll give her a chance, which led to this. I doubt she'll be invited back. She also randomly gets upset, as she is wont to do, that the other women aren't asking enough about her painting, which Nicole demonstrates isn't exactly true.
I asked you, Athena, about your mediums. You told me that you paint with acrylic and you paint with mixed media.
I said some of no.
You put gauze over it. You're displaying at Tim Olsen Gallery on Sunday.
She embodies the artist spirit entirely, taking it as a compliment when Sydney Menace Victoria calls her Jatz crackers, which is Victoria speak for crazy.
Well, if she said I'm crazy, I've got to take that as a compliment. Okay. Like, seriously, think about it. Like, I'm an artist. If someone doesn't think I'm a little bit crazy, then it means I'm bloody boring.
Her spirituality really grates on the other women, as it makes up the core of her conversations, and to them, her out-of-control behavior doesn't seem to line up with all the poetry she waxes. They find hypocrisy in her claiming to be vegan, well, 80% of the time, yet wearing an ivory cuff. She's also incredibly combative, feuding with literally every cast member at some point. Those each deserve their own breakdown, so let's hold off on that for now. Another aspect of Athena X's identity is her Greek background by way of Denmark. She has a fun Greek-themed birthday party and references her culture often. And last, despite her quest to mimic Buddha, she's incredibly materialistic. She's really into jewelry, but that makes sense as her husband is a jeweler, working in his family business, Levendi Jewelers. She hosts a cute event, Breakfast at Levendi's, where she treats the women to watches and lets them try on whatever pieces they want. She's also the fashion queen of the cast. As is her nature, she goes for very eccentric looks, sometimes adding unnecessary elements.
I like it without the net.
What are you talking about, Panos? You have no idea. This is so avant-garde.
Luckily, Victoria is there to keep her in check. Aside from her propensity for capes, I really loved a lot of her looks and look forward to seeing what she'd wear. As far as her interactions with the other women, she was a total nightmare. It was so ridiculous that I need to devote a whole section solely to that, but it was just constant. Yet despite her typically being at fault, or at least reacting to things in the worst way possible, I still find her oddly likable. Maybe it's just because she was the underdog, the one who will bite back, but I found myself often rooting for her. She's one of the most eccentric housewives I've ever seen, and I absolutely loved watching her. So let's take a quick breather from the chaos and talk about our quietest cast member, Melissa. So Melissa was the most interesting to me going into the show, as she was a teenage soap star and pop star. She seems to be best known for her single, Read My Lips, which was a hit in 1992, but we see her trying to stay in the spotlight, telling us she's performing at nightclubs pretty regularly. She's also filming a horror movie about an evil pig of some sorts, which I need to see. I'm curious if there's anyone watching in Australia that remembers her initial time in the sun. If so, let me know how big of a deal she was. There was something very Celebrity Big Brother about her to me. Like, she was a decently big deal in the 90s, but hasn't maintained the spotlight and isn't ready to give it up and fade into obscurity, so she's taking any opportunity that comes her way. She does have a sweet earnesty about all that she does, though, being really excited about the pig horror movie and is fairly humble about her singing career. It does get to her a bit when she finds out Athena X put down her career.
She's a has-been, guys. What was her latest hits?
But it doesn't totally shatter her. In terms of the other women, she was probably the most hands-off when it came to the drama. She did get into it with Athena X, as everyone did, but other than that, she was kind of known for being the drama-free one. But let's talk about someone who is the opposite of drama-free, our queen bee, Victoria. So Victoria came in owning the place. She gets the intro scene and is immediately gossiping about the other women who she hasn't even met yet, saying she heard Athena X is a wackadoodle.
Apparently she's Jatz crackers.
She's what?
Jatz crackers.
And gossiping about Lisa Oldfield and her husband David.
The one that was shagging Pauline Hanson.
Allegedly.
She lets us know right away that she is the lead of the show and jockeys for power right from the jump, letting Athena X know who's boss. Even if the cape was an odd choice, it's truly insane to throw it in the harbor right upon meeting someone. This lets the women know that they've got a choice. Either go off onto Planet Weird with Athena X or join her team, and most of the women join Team Victoria. She also seals the center position early on by planning a lot of events such as her all-white lunch and an excursion to the Whit Sundays. She's kind of a typical mean girl, laughing at Athena X's fashions.
Athena's got the most hilarious turban on that I just can't even get past.
And making snide remarks, but there is something kind of motherly about her that I think draws the other women in. Lisa chooses her to open up to about her marriage issues, though Victoria immediately uses that against her. I think a lot of the women are scared to have her against them, as it's not a good place to be, so they fall in line. We do see a more tender side with her personal storyline of finding her father, which ends up being quite a journey. She tells Krissy and us early on that when she was just a small child, her mother's family paid her father a lot of money to leave them be, and he took it. She hires a private investigator who tracked the information down that her father had died in the early 80s but left behind a half-sister, who she later connects with on camera during the cast trip to Singapore. I think that this insight didn't necessarily make her cruelty more palatable, but demonstrates that she likely has this deep wound of rejection, causing her to treat people poorly. Her main target is Athena X, causing Athena X to harbor a vendetta against Victoria, making it her mission to get the other women to see her for who she truly was. She almost succeeds in Singapore when the other women take offense to Victoria not prioritizing them, skipping out on their final dinner. But when Athena X and Lisa try to launch a full-out intervention for her, throwing the other women under the bus in the process, it flops and Victoria is able to scoop her allies back up. I did find Victoria to be an interesting housewife, but it seemed like she burnt herself out early on. She started with a bang, insulting the other women before even meeting them, and pulling antics like throwing Athena X's cape in the Sydney harbor the first time she met her. Her antagonism made Athena X and Lisa Oldfield seem sympathetic, which is a feat in and of itself, but it seemed needlessly mean and purely done for the cameras. She fizzled out in the back half, not showing up to several events. It kind of reminded me of Melbourne's one-season wonder OG Andrea Moss, where she was a major player early on, but if Sydney had continued, I can honestly see her not having come back. She seemed kind of over the ladies by the end, even the ones she'd worked so hard to bring on as allies. I almost wonder if the experience lost its novelty midway through, because while she had excuses each time she didn't show up, it seemed like she was just disengaged. But still, she was a central part of the Real Housewives of Sydney, and even if she was solely motivated by creating good TV, she succeeded. Okay, but let's switch gears and talk about Krissy, who at first was my least favorite. She's recently returned back to town after being in Shanghai for a few years. She's a proud trophy wife who is completely unashamed of her plastic surgery.
And what other surgery have I had? No, natural, maybe. That's about it. Pinocchio.
And kind of bimbo-esque nature. Her husband is still back in China, and other than a big family dinner, we don't see too much of her on her own. I didn't really care for her at first because she seemed just like Victoria's lackey, but as the series progressed, she became one of my favorites. She was probably the kindest and most compassionate cast member and took efforts to understand the others, especially Athena X. They even had a brief bestie era towards the end of the series. But of course, it imploded when Athena X threw her under the bus at the first chance she got. More on that later. She was always quick to jump in and defend the others and wouldn't allow others to say nasty things about the other women when they weren't around to defend themselves. We also saw her be incredibly supportive and kind when Victoria was looking for her father and then half-sister, seeming more emotional about it than even Victoria was. Krissy really grew on me. But let's move on to the cast member who is eerily similar to Krissy in looks and background, though not really in personality, Nicole. So like Krissy, she's recently moved back to Sydney, though she's been spending her time in London. Like Krissy, we don't really see much of her husband except on Skype. Nicole just may be the preppiest housewife we've ever seen. She has a propensity for headbands and gives her daughter a very posh life. She's kind of like aggressively upper class, telling this insane story about traveling at the beginning.
During the flight, I take them and I walk through the whole aeroplane.
Oh, my God.
Really?
Yeah, and I see people and they're sitting like this and they're squashed
I know,
in with
it's
their knees.
horrible.
And I say to them, look, do you see all those people? You're one of 6 who's sitting where you're sitting.
I thought that all of this was leading up to her being kind of a side character, there for the laughs and the moments, but staying mostly out of the mix. But I was so wrong, as Nicole eased her way on into the drama, proving herself to be quite strategic. She, like most women, feuds the hardest with Athena X, taking a lot of issue with her not remembering the other women's children's names. This whole bit deserves a section of its own, but I love that she stayed fancy with her fighting, arguing about manners. I thought Nicole was great. She's everything I love in a housewife. Wealthy beyond belief, concerned with manners and appearance, and bored enough in her own life to meddle in that of others. But let's move on to Matty, owner of a med spa, one of the first apparently to bring fillers and Botox to Sydney. Bless her heart. Matty is a trip. She's another that I wasn't into at first, but really grew to love. At first, she seemed to be another one of Victoria's minions, but she proved herself to be very eccentric and bring the comedy. She seems to really value people who are unconventional in her characters, demonstrated by her initial understanding of Lisa Oldfield and her eventual acceptance of Athena X. She introduced us to her Mama Elsa-esque friend who put on a dog and cat wedding in support of gay marriage. Plus, she's kind of kooky herself and was funny with her confessionals. She's also from Iran, and like Athena X with her Greek identity, she's very eager to bring the ladies and us viewers into her Persian culture. I always like seeing these glimpses we get into different cultures we get on The Housewives. She shows us early on that she's messy, ratting out Athena X for saying Victoria was round-faced as a child. She's also not afraid to fight, getting into it with the others, namely Athena X and Lisa, throughout the season, but she's still able to move on and not carry a grudge, a very important housewife quality in my opinion. She also ended the season with an epic storm out. She also brought fun home life scenes, such as with her aspirations to trick her partner into getting the family a dog. Her lips may be fake, but my love for Matty is real. And finally, Miss Lisa Oldfield. Oh my god. This woman is quite a force. Australian people, let me know if this is true, but I get the impression that she'd be the other person mildly known prior to the show, as she was married to David Oldfield, who had previously been caught in a political scandal with Pauline Hanson, who the other housewives describe as an Australian Donald Trump-esque figure. I was curious about what exactly happened, and it led me down a crazy rabbit hole. It's really bad. I'll link a video in the description if you want to dive into this, but the political party he co-founded has now been deemed a hate group. I don't know anything about Australian politics, but this seems terrible, and it's an immediate source of gossip with the other women. Lisa herself loves to create controversy. The women are down on her right off the bat due to her self-described humor noir, taking umbrage with a post she made about Amy Winehouse.
Congratulations, Amy Winehouse, 5 years sober. Everyone knows why she was 5 years sober, because she's 5 years dead.
And honestly, things never really get better. She's a firm outsider in the group, actively feuding with Krissy, who she hates with a fiery passion. We'll get to that. And only really cozying up to Athena X and sometimes Nicole, who is a longtime family friend. Though it seems like the two of them have never really been all that close, but they have a loyalty based on family history. That phrase and phrase until it all out implodes at the reunion. A factor that could play into her difficulties with the women is that her marriage is completely on the rocks. Right off the bat, it's clear that there's tension, though Lisa has a brutishness that makes it hard to tell when she's actually mad. But throughout the season, we see her getting upset and trying to work on things with her husband. They seem to be at kind of an interesting point in life. Lisa is a high-powered career woman and has become the breadwinner in their household. David, who used to be a public figure, is now a stay-at-home dad, and it seems as if resentment has built between the two of them over this. He feels like she doesn't spend enough time with the kids and even goes so far as to imply she has a drinking problem on camera.
I can't even pinpoint where things started to go wrong.
Oh, I think it mostly started with your love affair with Mr. Champagne Cork.
She has many choice words about him as well.
I love my beautiful home. I just hate the mongrel that I'm living with.
It's clear that the situation is just toxic, but she goes back and forth on whether she wants to stay in the marriage several times throughout the season. I think this is a decent explanation for her behavior this season. As we've seen in the past, when housewives are going through severe marriage issues, it often leaks out as conflict with the other women. Aside from that, Lisa was absolutely hilarious and was definitely made for reality TV. From her unconventional parenting style,
But you're not staying down here just standing there like a dickhead.
to her pet snake, to her reads on the other women. She always put on a show, and it was actually a clip of her best moments I saw on Twitter that made me eager to watch the Sydney franchise. I don't know if I'd want to know her in real life, but she was really fun to watch. Alright, so now that we've discussed the ladies, let's talk about the major feuds. Let's start off with the Battle of the Titans, Athena X versus Victoria. Right from the jump, Victoria seems to zero in on Athena X as an easy target, saying she heard she was Jatz Crackers, aka Looney Tunes, before she's ever even met her. I think she thought Athena X might be super flighty and would be a crumbling lamb, but she was wrong. Athena X is a very even match as she begins the season telling new acquaintances Lisa and Matty that she heard Victoria was round-faced as a child. These insults are so absurd. But anyway, when they finally meet, they hate each other, and Victoria throws Athena X's fashion net cape into the Sydney harbor, storming out of the premiere party saying she did Athena X a favor. It was just such a mind-bogglingly weird thing to do that I think everyone doesn't know what hit them. It puts the fear of God in the other ladies, and despite Victoria being in the wrong, they lightly urge her to apologize, but all turn into her minions. Victoria's created a divide in the group, and despite being really mean, the alternative of Athena X is really not much better. I think Athena X's constant talk about spirituality and urging to randomly teach life lessons while putting the others down weirds the other ladies out, so they all try to cozy up to Victoria. The two spar here and there throughout the season, such as when Victoria throws a charity event for her company, Wrinkles Schminkles, and asks Athena X to donate an item from Levendi Jewelers, then doesn't invite Athena X. Don't worry, Athena X got her back. Their big face-off is on the maxi cash trip to Singapore when they get into a screaming match at a beautiful restaurant, causing napkins and glassware to go flying. It's around this time that Victoria started to pull back from the other women, and they are all upset when she doesn't attend dinner for their last night in Singapore. Athena X has also made good inroads with the other women, and they all discuss an intervention for Victoria. But when it's attempted back in Sydney, it flops and Athena X lands firmly on the outs again. From there, the two jab behind each other's backs and never get back on better footing. I think this was a fantastic feud. Both were incredibly mean and not afraid to go below the belt, but since they both did it, it was very evenly matched, so it didn't really feel like bullying or a gang up on either side. It was just two women who had nothing in common being forced to be in each other's presence. Both wanted the alpha position and would go low if it meant they could get it. I think what's funny is that Victoria really was quite cruel, and if Athena X could have just stepped back and not tried to force the other women to see it, she could have had her Victoria exposed party, but Athena X just couldn't help herself. But as mentioned, Athena X didn't feud solely with Victoria. Even if Vic was her big bad this season, she encountered many foes along the way. In fact, she feuded with every single cast member at some point, so let's do a quick run through. First, Krissy, who she had quite the journey with. Krissy was kind of Victoria's lackey at first, making jabs and jokes every time Athena X mentioned something spiritual, which was every time she opened her mouth. I think Krissy really wasn't totally meaning to be cruel. I think she really did think they were jokes, but Athena X's spirituality is obviously incredibly dear to her, and mocking it wasn't something she was willing to let go of. When Krissy briefly falls out with Victoria, she starts to understand Athena X a bit more, and she takes a bit of a liking to her. I think Krissy is actually a very empathetic person, and it pains her to see Athena X always being held to task when others weren't, so she found a soft spot for her. They have a brief bestie era until Athena X and Lisa launch their intervention for Victoria and immediately throw Krissy under the bus, then go on to state that Krissy is the truly bad one in all of this because she doesn't hold Victoria accountable. The divide furthers when Athena X accuses Krissy of accusing Matty of sleeping with an artist, escalating to accusations on both ends of the other having drinking problems, and all out explodes with glitter being used as a weapon. This feud really showed that Athena X is her own worst enemy. Krissy really tried to understand her and get close to her, but Athena X sabotaged it with a quickness. Another relationship she sabotaged, though more in her quest to take Victoria down, is Melissa. The two had known each other prior to the show, though the connection seemed to be flimsy. They hung out a lot at first, but when Athena X told Melissa Victoria said she had an eating disorder, Melissa took Victoria's word that she didn't, upsetting Athena X. Melissa admitted that she's sometimes afraid to speak up, and I don't think she wanted to rock the boat and risk having conflict with Victoria, who would all out destroy her, so she risked fighting with Athena X, and that didn't go well either. They face off on a boat in the Whitsundays, and Athena X says a bunch of mean stuff under the guise of trying to further Melissa's spiritual journey without her consent.
My plan was to basically put a spiritual bomb within Melissa, to basically ignite her soul so she can be awakened.
She then goes on to call her a dumb, shallow has-been.
Melissa didn't want to come because this is too advanced for her. She's the pot plant in the room.
But the two eventually make up, though we don't see them get all that much closer. She also has a brief spat with Matty early on when Athena X tells the whole table that some people are deep like her and some people are shallow. Matty takes offense, causing a spew of insults about Matty's plastic surgery.
You know what you do, Matty? You say, one for me, one for my client.
Matty realizes there's no escaping Athena X as they are both on the show and eventually sees the quirky side of her and starts to appreciate her. Though she ends the season souring on her once again when Athena X won't let accusations of her sleeping with a painter go and thinks that she always wants to cause controversy. She also has a pretty major long-term feud with Nicole, and this is my favorite purely based on the amount of sound bites that came out of it. So they start off fine, but Nicole begins to sour a bit on Athena X as she's always causing such a commotion, and it's just unacceptable to the queen of manners. Nicole tries to help her out a bit socially and advises Athena X to stop trying to teach lessons and talk about spirituality all the time and ask more about other people. She gets really fixated on Athena X not knowing people's kids' names.
How can I know someone's kids if I've never fucking met them, you idiot?
Instead of taking the tip and being better, Athena X takes offense to this. Nicole also holds her to task for wearing an ivory cuff despite being 80% vegan. Nicole also thinks Athena X brings on a lot of issues herself and doesn't like how she talks down to others. Things go left when the two meet up to discuss Athena X helping out with Nicole's upcoming charity event. They begin to discuss Athena X insulting Melissa at her art show, and Athena X goes wild, calling Nicole a plethora of childish names.
Who I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And if
Captain Eyebrows. You scare me and you bore me. With those eyebrows always lifted, I feel like I've done something bad. Is that why you've done that?
Nicole is stunned, but keeps it mostly together until Matty's Persian party where the two spar again, and Nicole isn't able to keep her cool. They argue about caviar.
The thing with caviar, it's not about having too much of it. You're only meant to have a little bit. It's just about the flavor.
And clothes.
I don't call you Captain Secondhand Clothes.
And ring sizes.
Talk to my 6-carat diamond, you
You know
bitch.
what? I got 8.5.
And it's clear the two are not on good footing. But Athena X apologizes by giving Nicole a book on forgiveness, and they do better on the trip to Singapore. But by the finale, Nicole is once again tired of Athena X's antics, and they end the season not as friends. And last, let's talk about Lisa and Athena X. At first, the two were both kind of outcasted, and I felt like I was watching a season of Big Brother, praying the outsiders would see they're on the bottom and band together, and they finally did. I was so excited, and we got so much great content of the two of them shopping and plotting and scheming. Things are going great. Lisa feels very protective of Athena X, but when Athena X buddies up to Lisa's nemesis, Krissy, things fall apart. I think Lisa was feeling a little jealous that her friend was suddenly taken away, and she was left on an island all alone. But when Lisa and Krissy face off in Singapore, and Lisa says she heard from Athena X that Krissy had said a bunch of negative things about her, which had harbored the grudge, Athena X denies it in front of everyone, and Lisa is upset, but they slightly make up until Athena X brings it up out of the blue again in an effort to demonstrate the yin and the yang we all possess.
We all have yin and yang. Yeah. Even my best friend the other day, you know, she has blatantly said the most atrocious things about Krissy.
This makes everything worse, and they face off in a way only they could. Lisa is really disappointed in Athena X turning on her and not having her back. I can see that it was self-preservation on Athena X's end, as she didn't want to damage her relationship with Krissy, but Lisa had really had her back, so I can see why she's upset. Just as abruptly as they fell out, they make back up, with Athena X professing her love for Lisa. The two spend the rest of the season once again as a duo, especially when everyone else turns on them. They're better on an island of two, in my opinion. Athena X wasn't the only one having feuds, as there was another biggie this season, which was Lisa versus Krissy. Lisa kicks things off by calling Krissy Chewbacca.
I didn't watch Star Wars. What's Chewbacca look like?
It's not good. She's big, she's loud, and everything that comes out is nonsensical. It may as well just be,
and spends the rest of the season absolutely hating her, slut-shaming her at every opportunity she got.
She's a whore, she's a slut, she's a tart, she's a mole, she's a fucking embarrassment.
As mentioned like a minute ago, it seems as if Athena X was really riling her up against Krissy, saying Krissy had said her relationship issues were fake and put on for attention. This had driven Lisa mad, and on multiple occasions she reams Krissy out viciously. The two eventually come to a resolution in Singapore and decide that they can be cordial non-friends, but it doesn't last and they end the season hating each other. And last, the ultimate feud, which was Lisa versus nature. This all went down in the Whit Sundays when Lisa had gone snorkeling. She'd been with Nicole and Matty, who had gone in early when Lisa was ripped away in a current. She tried her hardest to do the international sign of emergency, which nobody else, including me, had known.
Guys, if you see me doing this, this is the international symbol for fucking emergency.
I didn't know that! I didn't know that!
Yet nobody even looked her way. She nearly drowned, but thankfully she had a guardian angel.
And finally, this morbidly obese guy on a kayak towing a giant inflatable swan.
What's his weight got to do with anything?
This was such a hysterical moment, with the oddest details that make the whole thing questionable, yet I kind of believed it happened exactly as Lisa said it did. It's just too weird to make up, you know? So let's talk about this season as a whole, starting with the positives. First, the cast was absolutely incredible. All of them were hilarious in some way, especially in confessionals. They all weren't afraid to fight and brought it with the drama, not being afraid to get right down to business and make a scene. The drama started immediately and kept moving throughout this season without parsing out one single conflict for too long where it got exhausting. We also had many fabulous fashions and the wealth level was jaw-dropping. Sydney as a setting was devastatingly beautiful and I loved the beachy backdrops. Their trips were top tier both in location and the drama the ladies delivered at them. It's also kind of jarring in a good way to me as an American to hear people cussing without getting bleeped out. It kind of made me think about why they bleep in the US. I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts on this. All in all, I just love the season and I'm craving more. But now the negatives. I think the biggest issue is one we're going to get with any franchise that starts post like 2012, which is that it's clear that the ladies had watched the show and were acting as they thought housewives were supposed to act. I guess it felt a little self-produced. Like, I don't believe for a second that Victoria would throw another person who she just met's cape in the Sydney Harbor if cameras weren't rolling, but honestly, whatever. I don't care if my housewives are self-aware, but it definitely came on strong, you know? I think it's the kind of thing that would have course corrected if we had more seasons, as the women would have gotten to know each other more, the relationships would have built further, and things would have seemed more organic. Other than that, I think an issue was that there really wasn't a protagonist. Not everyone was a villain, but the ones who weren't felt more on the side. I found myself wondering who I was supposed to be rooting for while watching, but after a while I didn't care and just started rooting for the drama and hilarious moments. The women definitely went low, but because they were making me laugh while doing it, it didn't seem dark the way Vancouver did. Like they hated each other, but were also putting on a show. Almost all of them would fight back, so there wasn't any Jody versus Mary type of dynamic where it feels too nasty. So the big question is, why did this perfect show ever get canceled? The best answer I could find is that the network thought it was too nasty. That the women were just mean for the sake of being mean, but like, what? That's kind of the premise of the show. And Melbourne was on the same network. Maybe they don't go quite as hard, but I don't think it was truly cancel-worthy. I also read somewhere, I don't know if it's true, that there wasn't enough of an Australian audience and they couldn't show it to American audiences because we would think the women were too mean. But like, that is absolutely false and ridiculous. Had it not been canceled, I would have expected Nicole, Krissy, Athena X, Lisa, and Matty to return for sure. Victoria's a maybe just because she was checking out of the show, and I can see producers maybe thinking she was the root cause of a lot of the nastiness, along with Athena X, but when you've got Athena X, you've got to keep her. Melissa I'd be unsure about. She didn't really mesh with the group and didn't bring much in terms of the group dynamics, but she had the most interesting personal storylines and maybe her name brought in viewers. Again, let me know how big of a deal she was if you know. I found an article saying they were talking to some new girls for season 2, so depending on how reliable that was, it seems like it wasn't an easy decision to let the show go. I've seen rumors pop up about it coming back, but I also see them for DC and Dallas all the time, so it could be a work of fan fiction. So let me end this by imploring you to watch or rewatch The Housewives of Sydney. It's a quick watch at only 12 episodes and brings so much to our Housewives universe. The cast is bonkers and you'll laugh a lot. The views are incredible and may make you want to travel to Australia if you've never been like me. So, those are my thoughts on The Real Housewives of Sydney. Let me know what you think of the show and if you could see it coming back. I always like reading other people's thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video to help the algorithm assess me in my quest to spread the word about The Real Housewives of Sydney. And thanks so much for all the support. I've been on YouTube now for over a year and this has been such a fun project. But for now, I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!